What happens when your worst fear becomes your reality? Hi, I'm Brent Cassidy. Welcome to the Nightmare Success In and Out podcast, where we explore how to overcome your fears and nightmares and set yourself free. We're going to be exploring this topic with guys I was in Leavenworth with and others who survived their own nightmare. These stories can be inspiring, sometimes sad. There's some humor, but hopefully you can come away with a nugget of something that'll help you knock down some of the prisons you built up in your own mind. Okay, welcome back, Nightmare Success listeners. This is where you guys come for what happens when your worst fear becomes your reality. How do you adapt, survive, overcome, set yourself free? Well, I have got an interesting and really been looking forward to this interview because I was just talking to Scott about, he and I were at the same place, Leavenworth, and Gina Pendergraph was nice enough to send me, I think Scott did it every month, if I'm not mistaken, but he had a newsletter from Leavenworth, and I told him, it's kind of like, somebody that went to the same high school as you and you graduate a little bit later. I was reading to see like what's going on at that place at Leavenworth. And he was giving us the blow by blows of the wonderful world of Camp Leavenworth. But so Scott, and Scott's got an interesting story because I was reading his bio. I forget where I was reading his bio, but he did one of those things like you see in the movie where you go like cross the border, and think I'm going to go down and get some painkillers and come back and he did. And then we'll get into this, but I think that he even, declared the medication, but he came up with some kind of funky story that he was getting it for his mom, and that ended up to be a charge for lying to a federal officer. There's more to the story, which we'll probably get into, but I can't wait to get into this because I think the other unique thing about Scott is, and we were just talking about this before we got on, he just got out at the end of September, and all of this is fresh in his mind, and I think some of the steps and things that he went through will be revealing for me and to the listeners out there. So before we get into all that, I want to recognize our show sponsor, Auto Plaza Direct. Who likes spending a couple of weekends walking the lots looking for a car? Then you spend 4 to 5 hours in the dealership to buy a car. It's kind of like a trip to the dentist. And I'm not talking, and I'm not knocking dentists because if anybody needs a good dentist out there, Eddie Logan, go check him out. Well, there's a better way to take away all that pain and hassle of getting a car. Auto Plaza Direct. They're your personal car concierge. Just tell them the car you want, what you can pay, and they'll go find that car for you. Negotiate your best price, and they'll deliver that car to you. They'll also offer you warranties and financing. It's all full service. Go to Auto Plaza Direct. Get started with your personal car concierge. The new hassle-free way, the car buying experience you deserve. Auto Plaza Direct. Tell them that Brent from Nightmare Success sent you. Mm-hmm. All right, Scott Carper, here we are.
Here we are.
You made it. You're out. Through the whole journey. Here you sit, talking on a podcast. How are you?
I'm good. I'm real good. Prison for me was, I think at the end, I'm still technically in it, but really a big net positive. So I have a really good outlook, and I look back and I'm working on some stuff that's kind of putting my journey in perspective. And I think I did it right, and I think it helped me in a lot of ways. As terrible and brutal as it is.
Well, let's go back a little ways because for people who don't know you, Scott, your world before you entered into the nightmare of prison, like growing up, being a kid, what did you have a pretty normal life, or were you wild and crazy?
No, I was a good kid. I like to toe the line, I think, but no, played a bunch of sports. Wasn't a super athlete like a lot of your guests or like you were. I was good as an athlete, but I was good because I worked really hard at it. Yeah. So, I played junior varsity, but was the guy who played, but wasn't the guy who played a lot. Prom, high school prom king. I was actually valedictorian. I had a perfect.
you're the prom. That's awesome. Well, I'm married
Yeah.
to the homecoming queen, so that stuff stays with you for life.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, our group was kind of a group that got nominated for that stuff, and so yeah, it was fun, and
So,
but not perfect, I had wonderful friends, fantastic parents, went to college, had a great college experience, and
where'd you go to college?
then I got injured, and that would be the start of when things started getting sideways, I'd say.
Scott, where did you go to college?
I went to UC Santa Barbara.
Santa Barbara's a nice place to be.
Oh yeah, it was unbelievable.
Okay.
Loved it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. So you got hurt. How did you get hurt?
Okay, the first time, let's just put it this way: I'm a spectacularly bad driver.
Okay.
So, and in that breath, I'm also the person that's in the car when somebody else gets in an accident. So if you and I are going to drive somewhere to go to lunch or dinner, there's a good chance that we're going to get in an accident because I'm in the car with you. But so I got in my senior year before I'm going to college. Like after I graduated, I was in the passenger side of a girlfriend's car, and it wasn't major, but we did a couple 180s and slammed into a pole. And that was the first time I significantly hurt my back. And when you're young, you kind of think, oh, it'll be okay, and this will bounce things off. But it was a significant injury, and I should have handled it better. But I just thought, I'll be fine in a couple of years, or I'll be fine in a couple of months.
Yeah.
And it didn't go like that. But I figured out a way to work with it, the stretching and therapy, physical therapy, and I got it so that it was workable. But it was challenging. Like it was one of those things where you're young and you don't want anything to affect your life, and it did. It was significant.
How old would you have been at the time?
I was just going into college, so what, 18? 17,
oh, you were
18?
like a young kid.
Yeah. And it was back, and everyone has back problems now, and so we
Yeah.
all get it, but it was bad. So at that age, you're going, carrying a backpack was tough, riding a bike. So, with good therapists, I figured it out. I figured out how to make it work. And it wasn't like I couldn't do everything I wanted to do, but I could do most of it. Like I could run, I could play sports, I could play softball, bike around. So it was fine. It was manageable.
So you head to college. Is there anything that happens in college that we should know about, or was that just a step in your life?
No, college was, on the negative end or the bad end or what?
No, just in general for your life experience.
No, college was, I was wildly successful in college. I was that kid who really didn't have to study much and got the best.
Yeah.
But I spent a lot of time in the fraternity. I was in a UC Santa Barbara at Lambda Chi Alpha. I loved the fraternity experience, and you don't have to do it at Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah. I had a bunch of accolades in school, and when I ended college, I was ready for the next experience in life. So
what happened? What happened to the next? What was your next step?
Okay, I started working in advertising.
Okay.
And in the movie industry.
Yeah.
So I had made a lot of connections in college, working for MTV and for Viacom, where I had potential to go into these different industries, and was super excited about that. And but I started in advertising because I wanted kind of a more secure job. And then let's see, where can I take you into a little segue here that'll lead to the fun? All right, here's what happened.
I was getting all excited about MTV, and then you told me you took the advertising job.
It was a great experience. And again, all through college and stuff, if I'm being honest, I'm partying. But I'm partying under control.
Sure.
On the weekends with buddies, have it under control.
Yeah, no, I did the fraternity thing.
Drink.
Yeah.
What's that?
I did the fraternity thing. I loved it.
Yeah. So, but I'm doing coke, and I'm doing, I'm drinking. I'm a big drinker, but I don't really like drinking. Now,
Okay.
all the other stuff I like, I'll be honest about. But so anyway, what ends up happening is I'm about 26, about 25, and I get this really crazy injury to my stomach. It's called a pelvic floor injury. And don't even know how I got it, but it was absolutely mind-boggling debilitating. So it may have been related to my back problems.
That's what I was thinking.
It started affecting me significantly in terms of pain in that area. And I went and saw every pain specialist and every urologist and gastro and neurological. I was on a mission to try and fix it. And they basically came to the conclusion that, it is what it is, and you're going to have to live with the pain, and now taking pain medication is a part of your lifestyle. And although I hated hearing that, it was that kind of level of pain and that kind of daily pain that I did say, okay, this is now part of the gig.
Yeah.
So I started taking it, and things were fine until getting into my late 20s. And
are you taking this every day? Is this part of your daily routine? Okay.
Part of the daily routine. And actually, I ended up figuring out what was wrong. It was so crazy. Not like an X on a like X marks the spot on a treasure map, but when you battle with doctors, here's my thing. Okay, so pretend you're throwing a football all day, and the next day your arm hurts. Why does your arm hurt? It's because you were throwing the football.
Yeah.
So I had this big battle with my doctors. They'd say, no, it's this, and I'd say, well, it hurt. It happened when I was doing crunches, or it happened while I'm doing sit-ups. So how can you tell me it's a thigh injury? Like, it was crazy.
Right.
So I kept trying to work on the area that I thought it made the most logical sense. And turns out it did. I met this doctor that recommended this one test. He was a very specific diagnostician who retired, but he was really great at telling people what's wrong with them. So I meet this guy. He tells me what to do. And I ended up finding this whole big community that's available for men that treat pelvic floor injuries. And after 4 or 5 months, it starts getting remarkably better.
Wow.
So, oh my God, wow. So in the meantime, marriage had dissolved because me and the fiance didn't work out, probably in large part because she didn't want to be with the guy that's going to be hurt for the rest of her life.
Well, how long was that? How long was that time period?
We were dating, or that.
Well, did you date and then get married, or you dated and got married, or you just dated?
No, we didn't get married. We were a month away from getting married. She pulled the plug about a month before.
Okay, how did that work?
Again, so I'm brutal. I'm devastated. I really relied on this girl a lot at that time, and again, I'm thinking this is going to be the rest of my life. So now I've got this. Bam! I can start getting better, and it's noticeably getting better. But here's the kick, Brent. Here's what I'll be honest about. I liked pain pills.
Yeah,
I did. And so,
do you feel like
I'm hooked.
But Scott, did you like them, or were you actually addicted to them because you had that kind of just part of your daily feel of what you had as your routine of how you were living? Were you addicted, or was it just like, okay, well, I like it?
Well, that's a good question. That's a great question. Here's the part of it that hooks me up is when I was getting better and I didn't need to take them, I could have stopped. Now, I was already addicted to them. I went through detox twice, and the detox for painkillers, the amount that I was taking was crazy. It was absolutely brutal. So I actually went through that in my late 20s, and then again when I went to Leavenworth, which is now at 48 years old, or I was 47 at the time. But I got better, and I kept taking them on and off.
Well, I know that I was reading, like, your dad was an attorney, your mom was a teacher, and I don't know if you had siblings, but like all along the way with you having this hurt part of your body and then the pain, was your mom and dad, are they a part of this whole thing, or are you just living this whole by yourself?
No, my parents are absolutely spectacular. They've been a part of it, good and bad, in terms of they supported me through all of it. They've felt the brunt of me, trying to get better and failing. And I couldn't ask for better, friends and parents. They're my best friends too. So
yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it was tough for them too.
So all this time, are you still in the advertising world?
Yeah, during this time for about 16 to 18 years, I was a large part of CBS Outdoor. I ran a very small portion. Actually, one of my closest friends is now the biggest guy there. His name's Chris Steinbacher. He runs the entire real estate division, but I was a couple steps below him, running Southern California, Las Vegas, doing billboards. So a lot of the billboards you see on the sides of the roads, the digital stuff. We were a huge part, or he still is, but in my, late 20s, early 30s, I was a huge part of putting up a lot of those signs, and a lot of areas that when people never thought we'd put them up. So it was a huge movement. The billboards became incredibly valuable, and we were the
pioneers
on that.
And was that good money? I mean, were you making good money? I mean, you're at a young age there. It sounds like you had a big region, and it sounds like you possibly make good money doing that.
Absolutely. It was a great job. It was a great career. Lots of fun people in it. And one of those industries where you pull back the curtain and it's gigantic. And there's some, our boss was Artie Marino, who owns who owned the Anaheim Angels. So it was a super fun guy. He actually sold it to Viacom. So, Mel Karmazon, and I never met them. They weren't my bosses, but they owned the company.
Yeah.
So we were just this massive company with all these resources and all these neat people, and so big. But it was a fantastic job. And again, I worked with one of my best friends and a bunch of friends, and a great boss. And so I really enjoyed the job. But during that whole time, I was not all of it. I mean, again, there's stages of it where it was worse. I just want to be real honest with you and with the viewers and with my family who obviously will watch this, that I'm not sugarcoating anything, because that's one of the things that bothers me when people tell their story.
Mm-hmm.
They try and minimize things, and I will not do that. I need to own this stuff, and I'm happy to, because I've nothing to be afraid about being honest about it. But during that time, I on and off, there was a good period of 5 or 6 years where I was sober again, not on any pills. And then I got back on them, and I was kind of a functioning pill addict, I guess you'd say.
So you were just struggling. And I've watched some of there's 2 or 3 shows on right now on Netflix, Pain Hustlers, and there's 2 or 3 of them that are on. It shows, it was almost like a moment in time when all of these pills were being kind of divvied out there to say, hey, does your knee hurt? Does your elbow hurt? Here. And, all these people started getting addicted, and it became, something that they didn't expect. And the struggle is what I think people maybe don't understand, is how hard it is to remove yourself from something that you're addicted to, because there's such a strong, feel of your body to it.
It's like nothing I can explain. I mean, I read a lot of books, and over the last 2 years, and some amazing books on addiction. There's a book by an ex-football player that just was written. God, I'm trying to think to remember the name of it. Anyway, he does the best job I've seen on somebody. He played for the Carolina Panthers. That's what I do. Oh, Lord of the Underground.
Okay.
Hero of the Underground. And he talks about addiction better than any book I've read, and it's just brutal. I mean, what it does to your body when you detox. When I was in Leavenworth for the first 4 months, I was detoxing for 4 months straight, and it was, oh my God, I wouldn't wish it upon anybody. It's miserable. And, just so you see, when you see the way it does that, when it has that kind of effect on you, that's crazy. But also you see and hear the stories about what people do to get drugs. They go broke, procuring them. They steal from family. They
get into dangerous situations. That
leads to harder drugs. I mean, the story and the struggle's real, and it's scary.
Well, so Scott, because up to this time, and when did it get to the point where you got into your nightmare and you found yourself going down to Mexico? Was that something you'd done before, or was that a first time deal that you were going down for painkillers?
No, I mean, I'd been down to Mexico sporadically for fun trips and purchased them then. But no, this was a new plan, a new stupid plan. Obviously, it was some spectacular thought went into it. But no, this was just part of something that I was already doing. I was getting into the cannabis industry, and some of the people that worked for me, some of the connections, had access to these people in Mexico that had pills. We were driving close to the border to visit locations, and Temecula and Vista, and anyway, so it was one of those things like, oh yeah, I'll go across the border and see what I can do, and then I'll go back and take a look at some of the farms on the way back to Los Angeles. So, because again, at that time I'm living in LA. Mm-hmm.
So, do you go over across the border by yourself and then come back through with the pills, or like, had you, first of all, it sounds like what happened is that you declared those pills when you went back to enter back into the United States. Is that how that happened?
I did, but here's the kicker, and here's where, I've written out my story for people to read. It's a very complicated story, and I'll do my best to
let's get complicated.
Provide enough character for it. But what happened? Here's the gist of it. I trusted some people that were working with me that I shouldn't have, and while in Mexico, this guy that was working for me put enough meth in the car, in the floorboards and other things to populate, meth for an entire another country. Now, I drove through the Mexican border, not thinking a thing of this. They asked me to declare anything. Yes, I'm declaring the pain pills that I had purchased, and it just so happens that a dog probably located it. Again, I'm simplifying the story, but you can get the gist of it.
Yeah.
I should have never been in Mexico. Was that the dumbest thing in the world for me to have done? Yes. Should I have known something was going on? Absolutely. Did I? No, I did not. And I will never change from that version of the story. But should I have? Yes.
Yeah.
So, I've been getting dumbest smart guy comments for
I saw that in your bio.
Yeah, and so this may take the cake. But again, when you're looking and you're an addict and you're trying to get pills and stuff, you overlook some really obvious things. So I'm not, this is 100% my fault. I'm not pushing the blame off on anybody. But anyway, so the dog sniffed it. They asked me if I'd go through secondary inspection. I'm like, sure, nothing to worry. I mean, I'm literally watching Rick and Morty on my iPad as I'm waiting at the border. We go through the secondary unit. Some red flags must have been raised. They asked me to get out of the car. Pretty soon, then I have cuffs on me, and then I'm sitting, in the Otay Mesa border lobby, wherever they, hold.
What are you thinking, Scott?
At that time, I was thinking some sort of mistake, and then when they called me in, the next day, and they started, talking to me, and then again, the law enforcement can be very funny in certain ways, but I'm trying to get out of them what I did wrong, and they're telling me, oh, and they wouldn't tell me. And so finally, I got loud, and I'm like, listen, so many games, let's be honest here. As soon as they said meth in the car, I said counsel, and then I was freaking out.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow. So what were the next steps that happened?
Well, at that point, I'm starting to detox, even a few days off of medication, and you start to feel it. And I've been taking, large quantities at that point. So, my father immediately bailed me out. I was in 4 days at a medical portion of the San Diego. And then I was, in the SMCC, I think it's called, for, maybe 11 days total. And then I'm out. And then I'm putting my case together, deciding that I'm going to go to trial, figuring out my game plan, how this is all going to work.
So you're out. Your dad's an attorney. Is he helpful in this situation, knowing the jam that you're in, and this is a federal case, and you're talking about drugs, and it sounds horrible. Like what all is happening in your world?
Well, unfortunately, he had retired, so he actually unretired at a later date, so he could help me. So he's a poor guy.
Yeah.
But it's I actually have a lot of friends that have jobs in law, and unfortunately, they're all state or civil, and so federal crime is far different. I mean, better than state, and so I'm sitting here going, I got all these resources. I did not.
Right.
I had very little resources. So, we used referrals from other people, but we ended up going with attorneys we liked.
There's nothing, Scott.
There's no way.
But Scott, you bring up a good point there, because I think that there's a moment, certainly hit me, when you see the United States of America versus your name. I mean, I don't know if there's anything more intimidating on God's green acres than to see the United States of America versus your name, because you all of a sudden feel the weight of how heavy that is and what that means. And there's nothing you can do at that point but try to step forward, and it's a heavy step.
I think people don't understand too how incredibly powerful the resources, the unlimited budget. I mean, there's a reason they have a 96% conviction rate, and it's not because there aren't people out there that have, great stories to tell that might be innocent, provide innocence. It's because they come at you with a machine gun, and it's crazy. I mean, if they don't like your answer or that you beat them on something, they'll just switch up the verbiage and come after you for something different. It's crazy. It's crazy how much power they have and how they can influence it. And so fighting them, knowing now what I know then, I would have never even begun. I would have just told the public defender to find the best deal that we could.
How long did the whole process take for you?
It was during COVID. COVID really threw a wrench in all of it, but I don't know how much that would have sped my case up. But it was about 2 years to trial. And then, it'll be 4 years when this is all said and done, from beginning to incarceration.
So all along, you're saying, I'm going to take this to trial.
Yeah, I mean, I had a different mindset at that time. And at that time, it was a very simple thing. I mean, I'd never even been around meth in life. For crying out loud, I couldn't finish Breaking Bad. I have, again, a newfound respect for meth, since when you go to federal camp or prison, you realize everyone who's there for drugs has done meth. But at that point in my life, I mean, this is completely wrong on my part, but I'm just going to be honest about it. I was offended anyone could think I had anything to do with meth. Mm-hmm. And I just didn't know anything about it. So kind of like I had this belief that I was in some different echelon of drug, addiction. Like I didn't do it.
You were in the upper class drugs.
Yeah. And that was just terrible logic on my part, but that's honestly how I thought. So, I just did coke. I just did pills. I didn't touch that stuff. So how dare you accuse me of that? And I thought, hey, I'm on the board of directors at UCSB, a Greek Man of the Year. I'm a valedictorian. I have all these amazing accomplishments. I have this all-star team of people that want to go to bat for me. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking there's no way they're going to think I did it. We're going to figure something out. And I could not have been more wrong. They didn't care about any of that. As a matter of fact, that probably motivated them to go after me more. They're like, oh, let's make an example of this kid, or this kid should have known better. All true things. So they did offer me at the very beginning, lying to a federal officer before any of it. And, if I could go back in time, I probably could have took that, and I probably wouldn't have done anything. Mm-hmm. But again, at that time, I'm going, they wanted me to sign a statement saying that I knew there was methamphetamine in the car. Mm-hmm. And at that, I was not going to do. Mm-hmm. So, everyone asks these questions, and it's so funny. Like, until you're faced with this hypothetical scenario, you'll never understand. But facing between 15 and 20 years in jail is terrifying. Mm-hmm. And so that's the risk you take if you go to trial, because if you don't go to trial, maybe you do, a couple years, or maybe you get out on probation. And in my particular situation, they did offer, lying to, but I didn't even go into discussions with it. We were going to fight it. And so we went down that route.
So tell me about it.
Oh boy. Maybe we were cocky. Maybe I was naive. I thought being frank, we got our ass kicked in trial. It's not that my attorneys weren't good. The power of a prosecutor is spectacular. We had all these motions set up what motions are in this particular sentence is their rules set up to how the trial is going to be governed. So, for example, when I went across the border, the agent said I was out of control and combative and sweating and all whacked out. And I'm like, that is not true. I was watching a program on an iPad, Rick and Morty. I want that video right now. That video, and there's videos everywhere of everything. I want to see that stuff. There's no way it went down like that. Mm-hmm. So they start getting the videos together, and I get the testimonies from the border agents who say all these things that I did. And then guess what? The video goes missing. Huh. Crazy, right? Okay. So now we can't verify what I said or verify what they said. So we put together a motion in order for us to set the rules of how we're going to discuss that stuff. So I couldn't talk about what I think happened on the border. They weren't supposed to be able to talk about it either. Okay, in terms of my actions and what I look like.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's one of the things that's in place as a rule to govern the trial. When we're at trial, the prosecutor just ignores all of that. In my opinion, she says whatever she wants, and so we're sitting here flipping through the guides, trying to find where we said you could say or couldn't say this. And so I feel like she really caught us off guard. Like she got us off our game.
Yeah.
And so I think we spent half the time in disbelief that she was doing the things that she was doing and getting away with them. Because the judge would admonish her, but she'd just keep going. She'd just say it a slightly different way. And again, this is all my take on it. And then, my
but this is interesting though, Scott, because most people don't go to trial.
No, I know that, and smart. But my attorney thought, that there would be no, I wanted to call these witnesses and put on this show, about what a great guy Scott is. And my attorney was like, you don't need to do that. And then I also think that some of the people that we wanted to bring forward who were in cannabis wouldn't have been strong witnesses for me. They would have been picked apart. I think people underestimate when you go up as a witness, you're going up against very intelligent people that do this for a living. And so they would have been picked apart by the prosecutor who was sharp.
Yeah.
So I just think our strategy was wrong. I disagreed with it, but I deferred to them. And, in the end, we lost. And we lost big. But here's the caveat. The prosecutor, said some outlandish things throughout the trial that we objected to and that the judge should have reprimanded her further, but kept making mental notes. She said things like, nobody in the history of our office has ever had this much meth in a car and not known about it. How can anybody say that? Well, you don't know what you don't know.
You wouldn't know, right?
She would say stuff like that to the jury, and that's a very powerful statement. And so, literally out of luck, we had a big audience for this trial, and in the back there was attorneys that were in the same office as our attorneys. And they just happened to know of an exact case where this exact same thing happened, where somebody didn't know about it. It was massive amounts of quantities of meth, and it was under the prosecutor's caseload.
Wow.
So it looked awful for the prosecutor that she just made the statement. So we objected right after the jury verdict, and the judge had everyone get together, and basically she said to him, "Hey, they've got a point. You're making some statements that you can't possibly be saying, you shouldn't be saying. So I think you guys need to come to a plea deal. If you don't, I may consider throwing this verdict out," which would have been very bad for her and her publicity. And so I had admitted on the stand to lying to a federal officer. I did lie to a federal officer. And so I took that.
Wow.
So then when I go to sentencing and I didn't have the right strategy, because the attorney at that point, I hired another attorney because I was upset at the previous attorney. So the new attorney I had was a brilliant litigator, but not so good at, at the rules of the BOP and the rules of getting into RDAP and what place do you ask for. And if you want to get a lower sentence, how you need to talk to the judge. We didn't do any of that. So I learned about the prison professors and the Justin Papernis and Michael Santoses after I'd already been sentenced. So, wow, missed out on a big opportunity. So I just went up there and said, "Hey, okay, what do you got for me?" And not in a disrespectful way. I just, so I got 24 months. The judge said to me, "I don't think you knew. I don't think you knew, but you should have known." And so all this stuff I've just said in the prior, where I feel like I'm justifying my actions. Let me be clear.
You're just telling the story of what happened.
Okay, well, good. I'm glad you feel that way, because it's something I'm really concerned about, because the story is what it is. And I'm not going to own to something I didn't do, but what an idiot for being there, for being in that situation.
Nobody can prove that you knew anyway, Scott. You're the only guy. And that's the unique thing about your case is that nobody can get inside your head except you. And obviously you weren't, and just listening to your story, you're not even a meth guy. You were looking for painkillers because you were addicted to, and you thought this would be an easy, fast way, cheaper way to stay on your high that you were addicted to. I get it. So I think another incredibly fascinating thing is that you're a California guy.
Yeah.
And how do you find out that you're going to Leavenworth?
My lawyer asked for Lompoc, which did not have an RDAP, so that was mistake one. So we started filling out this paperwork to try and get to an RDAP, which was Sheridan, Oregon, was supposed to be the closest. About a week before I'm headed to turn myself in, we find out it's in Kansas. And Kansas does have an RDAP, and I'm going, wow. So 1,496 miles away is where you guys have designated me. Okay. That's going to be interesting. So we hop on a plane and flew to Fresno. My father was nice enough to come with me and walked up right in front of that big, beautiful prison and terrified as can be. And
1879 is when that thing was built, and they walk everybody through that gate, which is not where the camp is, but you process through.
Yeah, you know better than I, brother.
And you know, the funny thing about and terrifying thing about it is when you walk through that and they process you and they put you in that holding place in that basement for a while, hours, you start thinking, first of all, I don't have any idea, what happens next. And nobody's going to tell me, I guess, until they tell me. But I'm wondering if they know that I'm not supposed to be here. And I wonder if that's what they hear all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, I'm not supposed to be here. Oh, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, whatever. Everybody says that.
Yeah, they don't care. But you're right. You're wondering what they've heard and what they don't, if they believe some people or if others, they just shake their head at all of it. But you don't know.
But you finally get through that process of getting prisonized. You get yourself set and ready to head down to the place that looks like a rundown schoolhouse with a big barbed wire fence around it and fenced. I think it's one of only 3 in the United States that has fencing for a camp.
Oh, bless their heart.
Bless their heart. And tell me about walking in that place.
Oh man, the best part is when I'm walking, they say, just walk that direction. And again, you know, there's just fields and you
Buffalo.
walk for a long time without seeing anything.
Buffalo.
I'm sitting there thinking I'm going to get shot. Like they're going to think somebody's escaping because I'm not walking the right way, and I'm out in the middle of nowhere. And finally, I get to the camp. There's nobody there, and so I'm just trying random doors. I'm thinking now I'm late and somebody's going to get in trouble. And so anyway, eventually I see somebody walk out of the one door I didn't try, and they walk right into the camp, and you're going, "Whoa, this is not what I thought it would be." So, welcome to Leavenworth.
What time of year was it? What season?
Oh, it was October. 8th? Yeah, so winter.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the other thing. Everybody talks about Leavenworth because it doesn't have air conditioning, which was really bad. But the other part of it is that it got really, really cold, and they didn't turn the heat on until about a week before Thanksgiving, and you'd freeze to death in there.
Yeah, yeah.
So, Scott, you walk into this place, and where were you? A2, A1?
No, I started. I'm sure you. I started in C2. I started in the
okay
pit.
C2. Okay.
Yeah. I'm right down and walked into the RDEP office. And the way I do things is I'm going to start working on whatever I needs to be worked on and on the to-do list. And my first thing was you got to get an RDEP. Yeah. And so I spent,
let's explain real quick for those people down in the Cayman Islands what RDAP is.
RDAP is a residential drug and alcohol program that you can take. It's between 9 and 11 months. It's structured. It's about 3.5 hours every morning, Monday through Friday. And if you pass, which is not as easy as you'd think it would be,
right,
you can get up to 12 months off your sentence on FSA First Step Act credit. Now, depending on your sentence length, you may go as low as 4 or 12 months, or 6 months, which I got 6 months because my sentence was 24 months. But for anything over 34, you get a full 12 months off your sentence. So there's a big incentive to do it.
So when you went in there, you mentioned that you were starting to detox. Was that going on as you were, you said the first 4 months?
again, I spent all this money prior trying to find out what drugs I can take, look up what the BOP says is not necessarily, you know this better than anybody, is not necessarily what's going to happen at the individual institution or what the nurse may do or what that particular staff may want to do at that time of day, at that hour, based on their vibe. So the medication I've been on, which is a wonderful drug that helps you stay off opiates and helps with pain, and it's not a narcotic like Vicodin or like it's still an opiate, but it's called Suboxone.
Mm-hmm.
Suboxone is huge, and the BOP says that you can take it at Leavenworth. Leavenworth has it in their medicine cabinets. They can administer it, but they didn't want to because they claimed there was some problems with some inmates abusing it. So I said, what? I could have had 2 years. I could have weaned off this if that was the case. They said, oh, it's okay. We'll wean you off it, and a month later we'll put you on a shot called Vivitrol.
Okay.
Now, I don't know anything. Can't look up the stuff on the internet here. The Vivitrol and Suboxone are far different things. So I detoxed off Suboxone, and it was, I've been on it for over 10 years. Legal doses, not abusing that, but wow. So that was awful. That was absolutely awful. The advice was, for detoxing was go to church or walk the track.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no, I went to the bubble once at like 4 a.m. because I thought I was dying. My heart was pumping through. And the guard looked at me and he goes, they knew me this way. He said, hey, Carper, do you want to go to the shoe and be there? Or do you want to go back to your top bunk? And I'm like, okay, I'm going back. Of course I want to go to the shoe, but those are your options. Special
housing unit, the whole. How did you start? Now you're in this new primitive world. You're not someone who's been in this primitive world before. How did you start to adapt through it?
I got kind of lucky, I think, at the very beginning. I met some really great people that were super supportive, but my particular skill set and the way that I love to help people, that's one of my passions, is helping people. I was able to help some key people that kind of just made my life easier right off the get-go on a bit of, luck.
Wasn't that, Scott, wasn't that like one of the biggest surprises to you about prison? It was for me, is I always say that I was such a pansy when I was standing at the gates thinking, okay, let's see, I guess I'll get raped and then I'm going to get beat up and maybe get stabbed. I've seen that on the movies. And it was like immediately people, because I was walking into their world, they really did want to help me get set up. They really did want to help me, get as comfortable as you can get into that environment. And I guess for me, walking into an environment, a primitive environment like that, it was kind of the opposite of what I had planned in my head. And these guys helped me. They truly helped me, because I was like, a pup just out of, just walking and they knew that, and they just took me and said, hey, we're going to help you. And they did.
No, you nailed it. Yeah. I mean, like you said, if you want to be safe at a camp, you can be safe at a camp. You can get in trouble if you go looking for it, or if you fuck around. Sure. But for the most part, it's safe. I agree.
So you said, and then one of the things I noticed was you talked about losing 70 pounds, you were reading 150 books, and then you went through this paralegal program that you actually did really well in. 95% or above is what I remember. But then you really started helping a lot of people through motions and all kinds of deals that happen. Is that something? Did you have that planned in your mind when you were going through, or was this once you were there, you're like, this is going to be a way for me to kill my time, eat up my time by doing this?
I mean, this is the key to prison or surviving prison is avoiding idle time. Idle time is absolute death match. But no, I didn't plan on. I planned on doing the paralegal thing because I wanted it. That was part of my plan to stay busy. But to be honest, I mean, I had a BA in law, and I've always kind of loved to think of myself, because of my dad and other factors, that I was some sort of law genius. But I'm not. I don't know anything. I'm actually. I mean, who am I kidding? Let me be totally real. I am not impressive with that. But I got better at it. Yeah. And so I really forced myself to try and help people in these situations, because they had no better option and what they were doing was just terrible in terms of its potential for success. And some of these people had really strong arguments, and they just needed somebody to advocate for them a little better. And so I didn't do anything other than organize them and put their story together in a better structure, and then really push for them. Because it's kind of one of those funny things where sometimes we're the best advocate for other people than we are for ourselves.
Yeah.
And so when it was somebody else, man, I went to war for them, and we were very successful. I mean, I'm sure that's why in the limited times that I got into some trouble, which wasn't much, but I'm sure I got messed with because of those potential things. I did go into office hours and other things representing other people with them there, and that's not usual. And they let me get away with it to a certain extent, but they put my dad on the watch list because you sent in legal mail that they didn't like, which was my newsletters, which I was just walking 20 feet over to give to another case manager. So there was stuff like that where it was just like, okay.
So did you start writing
you did.
Scott, did you start writing your newsletter from month one, or did you work your way into that?
No, I wrote it every week. I'm on my 58th week right now, and I promised I'd do it throughout my incarceration. I did it the first week before I left, I think maybe 2 weeks. And then I wrote it every Friday, and then my dad, bless his heart, we built a kind of program to have it. I'd send it to him, he'd put it in, format it, proofread it, and then he'd kick it out to people.
And did you get any backlash from Leavenworth on that?
A little bit. I got some funny. I mean, I tried to be proactive about it. Again, I didn't use names, and although I had some very interesting things to say about certain staff and whatnot, I didn't call them out individually. I actually brought it to a lot of them and showed them it and said, "Hey, this is what I'm doing." I mean, Noel knew about it. My bosses at the kitchen, they knew about it. And then all the DTS staff, the RDAP program staff, I went and brought it to them. And I wanted them to know, because the RDAP staff reads all your email, they listen to all your phone calls. You can get in trouble for some of the craziest things. And I saw people get in trouble for the craziest things. I saw a guy, they heard him on a phone call, and he was talking about his girlfriend, and they knew he had a wife, so they made him call his wife and tell him. So there's crazy stuff that goes on.
Well, I mean,
I wanted to get
when you're talking about that, Scott, you think, they can't listen to all those phone calls. We lost our movie privileges for a month because a guy was bragging about that we saw a first run movie that they had gotten from Unicor, and because he was bragging on writing, it was a phone call, and that was it. And then he got in trouble, and the whole camp lost the movie rights for a month, which you're like, wow, they really do. They really do listen to all that. Well, let's talk about this too, Scott, because your world and my world crossed over because you worked in the kitchen. I worked at the food warehouse, and C.O. Noel, Correction Officer Noel, was my boss at the food warehouse, and he was your boss in the kitchen. He had changed jobs by then.
Yeah, well, Noel was a fan of you. That's what cracked me up. And he was. I mean, he liked everybody, but he wasn't a fan of people. But I thought Noel was one of the good few, probably 2 or 3 guys in that whole camp, staff wise, that was a good dude. He actually had some empathy, and he went out of his way to try and help people. But I got a job in the kitchen. To be super honest with you, Brent, one of the things that I struggled with over the last 20 years is I got lazy, and I did not, for lack of a better word, roll my sleeves up and get dirty. And I knew there is no way I would have gotten a job in the kitchen. That wasn't my style. And so that's why I did do it, is I wanted to wash tables. And also I'm a terrible cook. I thought I was going to learn to cook, but that's not how it goes. But I wanted to, since I screwed up so royally, I wanted to lean into this whole experience and say, okay, if you're going to do this, if you're going to change your life, if you're going to get better, you need to do all these things that you know are huge red flags, huge things you're failing at. And you're going to succeed at it. Step 1 is stop thinking you're so fantastic. You're not. And get a job where you have to bust your ass. And to me, that was the kitchen.
And I guess Noel was one of the kitchen cops, but there's usually 2 or 3 that you had to probably work through. But
yeah, there's McCoy, who I liked a lot, but had his interesting brush ends. But Kingus was one of my favorites, but it's because he didn't fire me. The one time One time I just tried to steal something, not even for me, because somebody else asked me. Again, I'm a terrible criminal, but somebody asked me to get him some bread, which, man, when you turn around, half the inventory goes out of that place.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I don't know how I got caught, but I had a half a loaf of bread, all ends, and I'm walking around the corner, and he's standing right there, and I throw it underneath the bin, like he didn't see it, and he goes, "Really?" And so I finished my shift, and afterwards he calls me in, and he goes, "You going to be an asset or a liability?" And I was like, "Oh my God, sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to do it." And he's like, "Okay, just don't ever do it again." So I actually was glad he didn't fire me.
Yeah.
But
well, they do sometimes.
They do. Oh, absolutely. For far less. So
yeah.
I think they knew. I just worked and got.
Yeah, you're a good worker.
Yeah.
They probably didn't want to lose a good worker because they're hard to find. And I mean, did you think it was odd? Because you and I talked about this before we got on, but did you think it was odd that Noel, your boss, was reading a book that was from a prisoner from Leavenworth?
Absolutely. I've never seen any of them. I mean, I know that I used to have some good conversations with McCoy. I know McCoy reads, and he's up on a lot of the shows and whatnot, but I've never seen, and he's earmarking. And again, Brent, this is a huge compliment to you. And I mean, I guess I wish I would have known what I know now so I could talk to him about it, but he was reading it because he's interested. He was reading it because he thought highly of you, which again, I didn't put this in together until way after, I think a month ago. So you and I had already talked, and I still didn't remember it.
Yeah.
I remembered it once I saw your book, and I saw the name, because he was showing me, and it was funny. He asked me for some legal advice. He goes, "They don't need permission to have my name." Was he? And I go, "No, he doesn't." But I didn't know the answer. I was just, and I qualified that. I said, "I don't know the answer to that, but I don't think so."
Yeah.
So he's not saying anything negative. Is he bashing you? No. Then what reason would you have to be upset? But he was excited about it. He was highlighting it.
Wow.
I don't know. I thought that was cool.
Well, he was one of the good guys, and like you said, it's unusual because a lot of them really take advantage of the situation that you're treated like cattle, and which is unusual because at Leavenworth there actually are buffalo roaming in the front. That's not something I expected to see at prison, but so let's talk about this. Scott, you kind of get through and become a guy that's helping people. You're giving yourself your own self-punishment of doing the hard work in the kitchen that a lot of people don't like to do. You start getting close, and then you do well. You do so well in RDAP that you give the commencement address to our class. Both you and I had that in common. I didn't know that I was going to take RDAP as far or as take it to as much as I took in from it. How did you start, once you started feeling like you're getting closer to the door, what did you start thinking about getting to the next steps?
I guess as soon as it was my, our transition quarter, I started planning, or the realities of that I would soon be leaving started hitting me, and I started trying to adjust plans for what would be going on outside. But my attitude in prison was I had to do it one way. Like I didn't talk a lot on the phone to people. I emailed a lot, but if I'm in prison, I'm in prison. If I'm out, I'm out. And so I really had trouble with that part of trying to stay connected to my life outside.
Plus you were so far away.
Yeah. And I didn't do well with that. So I really focused on prison. So I kind of was all in on RDAP up until the last day.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it was over, then it was a ton of emotions hit me, and it was crazy. Then I'm going home.
Yeah. And I think that's always kind of a weird transition because you do get into living your primitive life and your routines in prison. And the closer you get to getting out, you start to kind of open up that world in your mind. Is like, wow, I'm going to go out. And I've got to and then you have that unfamiliarity of, first of all, you can't wait to see your name that you're going to be released. But then you have this really unknown world of what you're going to be walking into next, because so many people say, well, the next step, you're going to hate it worse than, than the world you're in right now with your halfway house. Tell us how those steps went for you.
Well, it was funny as I'm leaving, I'm getting on the, about to get on the plane, and you're wearing all gray, so half the people probably know they probably think you're military or you're a prisoner. I'm sitting there going, you get $10. You don't get. They tell you got to make some phone calls, so you're scoping out, people that you can go up and ask to use their cell phone because we don't have public phones anymore. And so I'm standing there, and this guy goes, "Hey, congratulations!" And I look around. He's a employee at a headphone store.
Uh-huh.
And I said, "For what?" And he says, "Well, you just got out, right?" And I'm like, "How do you know?" And he goes, "Bro, we know."
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, "Okay." And so he goes over there. Guy actually gets me. He sees the crappy headphones I'm wearing. He goes, "You need a good pair of headphones." Guy gets me, for $1, gives me a really nice pair of JBL headphones. What a guy! And lets me use this phone so I can activate the credit card, and now I can buy something more than $3 which is what they gave us.
Mm-hmm.
I was excited to get home. I missed my family. I missed my friends. I knew I was going to have trouble with the halfway house just because I don't like that kind of structure. I feel like you're half in and half out, and I don't like that, like I said. And I wanted to get to home confinement as soon as I possible. The thing I'm cracking up about now is it's not easier; it's just different each step.
Yeah,
it's
that's such a good point, Scott. Such a good point, and I think that's something. Maybe a lot of people don't realize what you just said is so good. It's your next step. It's not necessarily easier. It's your next step of getting to where you want to be, but there's nothing easy about any of those steps.
I mean, I had all three of my jobs denied. I mean, what? A job working at prison professors, white collar advice, helping felons advocate for better positions, like a no-brainer job that you'd hope they want me to do. Work in a law firm as a paralegal, and then as work in an advertising agency, something I did for 17 years. My mind was blown. Like I would think, I turned these in on the first day. I thought they were going to go, wow, great. Thank God you've got these resources. Good for you. That's lucky. Go at it. Instead, they're like, no. And I'm like, well, what do you want me to do? And they're like, well, no, we need you to work at this kind of place or that kind of place. And I'm like, all right, what's the next step and who I need to talk to? And so I eventually am getting that.
So Scott, I want to make sure that I understand what you just said. You had 3 different jobs set up, and your case manager said, I don't think so.
He said no. She said the BOP reviewed these, and they said the BOP said no.
Was there any qualification or why that those 3 jobs that sound like great jobs for somebody to do?
I will get into it. Here's the first part. I said, I didn't invent the wheel here. I'm not some brilliant guy that came up with these job ideas. These are things that other felons are doing right now out there in America. It's not like I came up, I'm the guy inventing the Rubik's Cube in space. No, these are jobs people are doing. I'm just copying them. How are you saying no to them? So the reasons I got were that I need permission to speak with felons. And so I said, okay, who do I need to talk to to get that?
Yeah.
Then the other one, the law firm, they said they didn't want me around that type of clientele and or potential felon thing. And I said, excuse me, you don't know if I walk into McDonald's
exactly
under that theory, I can't go to an AA meeting,
right,
or an NA meeting.
Yep.
Because if you're worried about me being around felons all the time, I can't step outside of this house. So then the best one, the one that I got most, she said, nobody works from home. You can't work from home. I said, after COVID,
everybody works from home.
And working from home is a prevalent way. Well, we can't go to your house to view that. I said, yes, you can. The first day I met with you, I signed away my life. You can walk in this house right now. So what are you talking about? So once I put all those arguments together in an email, and I said, please, you cited some things in the manual that said I can't do these things. I've reviewed the manual. Please specifically point out where those things are. They took a looser stance, and all of a sudden they're approved. But for people that don't fight back, for people that maybe go, I don't know if
they fall through the trap door. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, what are you supposed to do?
They fall through the trap door. And Lewis L. Reed's got a great analogy about, the guy running on the track. the fire, the gun goes off and they start running and the guy falls down and he gets back up and everybody cheers and says, that's such a great guy. He's got all this potential. Keep running. And they cheer him all the way to the finish line. He said, now let's take that same analogy and work it back to the race of life. Gun goes off, starts running, guy falls down. They make him go back to the starting line. And then he goes and starts running again, and these trap doors start opening up that he doesn't see. And each time he falls in the trap door, he has to go back to the starting line. What you just said is exactly what Lewis L. Reed said, is that if you wouldn't have done what you did, Scott, and been smart about it and get the information out and say, tell me where it says this, that person just walks away without 3 jobs that they could have had.
And that's the part of the BOP that scares me is you don't know who's pulling the strings, who's saying no. Are they saying no just because they don't want to at that time being? Do they have some justification?
But it's such a big deal because that's a life-changing thing.
Yeah, it's scary. It's scary how much power they have. The entire BOP, and again, I won't get on my soapbox about this, but it's scary. And you know this. They wield an inordinate amount of power. And I know society doesn't. I just thought they don't care. They don't really know what's going on with all this. But if they did, if they even knew a shred of how mismanaged and how corrupt and how unethical a lot of the stuff was, I think it would shock people.
Yes.
Utterly.
Well, I think what you just said shocked me, and I've been through the process. You know, that story you just said, as a guy that's gone through all of it, shocked me. I mean, those are all good, legitimate jobs, and you just got somebody saying, yeah, I don't think so. I want you to go, drive a school bus. It's fascinating. But I think there's the more voices that are out there, and you telling your story and people listening to that, it at least invites them to understand that there's some real hardships that happen because, you've got a situation, Scott, where, and I did too, where you have support. For those that don't have support, when you have to check the box off that you're an ex-felon when you're trying to get the job, and then you got to tell a really good story to convince them to get past that, or to go try to find a place to live, and you got to check that box. They say we don't rent to ex-felons. Those are really tough things to get past. That you can see how it jumps up the recidivism rate with people that are really actually trying to make it work, and then they're getting hit right in the face, and you're living it right now. I mean, I've been excited to talk to you on this interview because everything's so fresh. You just got out of the halfway house. You just went through that with the case manager. You just had to go to battle for yourself. So where you are now, are you doing all 3 of those jobs, or what did you end up doing?
Yeah, I mean, funny thing, of course, you and I know you don't get health care in prison.
No.
You do get health care, but you do not get health care.
Might not want to try it.
No, hey, but I got a hernia the last 3 months in there, and then I got an abscess on my tooth. And again, if these things could have been fixed quickly, they might have not became the problem that they are. But so I had to get that stuff worked on. So I had emergency surgery on my mouth the first day I was out of the halfway house, and then I finally got to the doctor on the first when my insurance kicked in, and so I'm dealing with that stuff. But there is all 3 of the jobs are in play now. I'm already doing some of them, but what I've been doing is I wanted to really tell my story as well as I could in addition to the newsletter. So I've actually been working on a website that I just finished. It's just scottycarper.com. And I'm really proud of it. And it's going to basically, for the remainder of people that don't know about what happened to me, because there's still a decent amount of people, I want to really tell my story and then give everybody everything they want to know about it. So I partitioned a little time off on that and worrying about the health. So now that the health on its way and that's done, yes, I'm going to be working the advertising agency. I'm going to be donating as much time as I can to help people on this journey. I do that a few hours minimum every day.
Love it.
I had a bunch of calls today working with people, telling them about RDAP, telling them about the ways that I would navigate the system. And it's incredibly rewarding. I love being able to help people that are going in because it's terrifying.
Well, and see, the thing too, Scott, is that you can be such a help to somebody, and for that to be denied, that you shouldn't be able to talk to that person when you're the person that needs to have your seat at the table to actually help walk those people through, because you just experienced it and you can help them. And there's some new things in place with the First Step Act and some other things that people need to know about. And attorneys don't really get that involved in it, because once you are done with the plea, or you've pled, or you've been sentenced, the attorney part's done. When you start to stand at that gate and you enter that prison, there's a whole nother education that goes on, and you can educate people, because you can take some of that. And I always say, nothing is ever as bad as your mind makes it out to be, not even prison. But people need to be able to walk through those steps and understand that too.
It's funny you said what you just said, because I completely agree. It's on you to how you decide you want to deal with this. This journey, but if you can advocate for people, I think you should take the chance and do that, because there's a lot of things you can do, and educating people on how this system works and how what you can do within it to make your life better. That's essential.
Yep. So Scott, out of everything that we've talked about and all that you've gone through, what do you think's your biggest takeaway through all of it?
Wow. I think, we underestimate how powerful people and their actions and what they do can mean to our lives. I thought I absolutely blew it with all my friends and family. I thought this was unforgivable, and they're never going to forgive me. And that's a lot of why I wrote the newsletters. I had to start building a case for that I was going to be honest, and that I was going to tell my story from day to day, good or bad, because it's full of stupid things I did, full of mistakes, full of me coming to realizations of the people I hurt and how. But I just thought I underestimated how incredibly amazing some of my friends and family are, and the support they have. But also, I think I was scared of this opportunity that I'm going to prison, life's over, and then it snapped for me. And I got to be honest, some of my friends in prison are the ones that really got me to see it this way. A guy named Jason Newling, Phil Getz, some other people that just are unbelievable human beings that I feel so grateful to have met. But, I'll give you a good example. So I'm going to Fresno, and I'm like, God, I do not want to go to Fresno. This is going to suck. My attorney actually told me to try and stay in prison at the camp, but you can't do that if you're an RDAP. So I'm complaining about it, and in a funny gesture, one of them says to me, "Oh no, man, you got to go to Fresno and get the most gangster job you can. You got to own it. Like, you've been owning this entire process. You got a terrible job at Leavenworth. You've been helping people for free. You've been doing all these things that I can't believe you're doing. And now you're going to stop at Fresno."
Yeah.
And so he was right. Like, if you're going to do this, if you're going to fail spectacularly, you might as well put a cherry on top
and
of it.
own it.
I mean, I'm going to do everything I can to make this the greatest story of my life.
Love it.
So if that means volunteering in a clown costume, spinning, tables, I will do that, because that's a great story.
Yeah.
So, if my hernia hadn't happened, I would have got a job at 7-Eleven or Costco, or, going door to door giving out leaflets. I would have done anything to make it a great story. And so that right there, if you're going in, find out what you're failing at, figure out a successful plan, and own it. Like, if you want to lose weight, lose weight. If you want to public speak, public speak. If you want to be a leader, be a leader. But do that stuff, because there's no better time than trying that in prison.
Man, I love that. That's a good way to end it, because that is exactly spot on, Scott Carper. Good job. Hey,
thank you, sir.
If anybody wants to get a hold of you, Scott, what's the best way to do that?
The website just launched. It's www.scotty, Carper, CARPER.com. Or you can just Google me. I'm everywhere. That works that way.
Love it. And if anybody wants to get a hold of me, go to BrentCassidy.com. It's with a TY, not a DY. I would have liked to have been a Cassidy, though, like a Sean or David when I was growing up, but it's always been spelled wrong. It's with a TY. And leave me a message there, because I love to go back and forth and respond to questions and answers and do all that. If you like the show, hit the follow button, share it. It's a big deal to share it. Scott gave some good stuff here today. Share this thing out. I'm loving everybody. I've gotten a surge of new reviews on Apple, and it's just pumping the volume on the show. And I so appreciate everybody out there doing that. So, as I used to say when I was riding back and forth from Leavenworth, stay strong. I'll do the thing. And Scott Carper, thanks so much today for sharing your story.
That was awesome. Thank you for having me.
9 Minute Success, in and out.